The US Coast Guard and Canadian military continuing their efforts to find that submersible that went missing in the Atlantic Ocean with 5 people on board. The search is centred off the coast of North America, more than 640 kilometres off Newfoundland in Canada. Sky's Matthew Thompson gives us an insight into what it's like to be inside a submersible.
This is the Titan submersible. It's 6.7 metres or 22 feet long. Its hull is made out of carbon fibre and titanium, and it weighs nearly 10.5 tonnes, about the same as 6 cars, which according to its operator OceanGate means it's lighter and cheaper to run than any other deep water sub. Titan is powered by 4 electric thrusters, which allow it to travel at a top speed of 3 knots or 3.4 miles per hour. And it's able to dive to depths of 4,000 metres, roughly 13,000 feet. OceanGate says it would take 2 hours to dive the roughly 3,800 metres to where Titanic lies. The vessel is designed to take 5 people with enough oxygen for around 96 hours. A porthole window at one end lets passengers peer out into the depths, and large screens display various data from cameras and scanners that are mounted on the outside. And it also has a system for monitoring the vessel's hull in real time, which means it's possible to analyse how the hull is coping under the extreme pressure. Now, in theory, that should give the pilot enough warning of any problems to safely return to the surface in plenty of time. The search for the missing craft is focused in the Atlantic Ocean, about 370 miles to the south of Newfoundland in Canada. And let's be clear, this is an incredibly remote part of the ocean. It's said to have an undulating seabed at a depth of nearly 13,000 feet, with the Titanic wreck lying in a trench. And that's so deep that Britain's highest mountain, Ben Nevis, would fit in nearly 3 times. So what are the conditions like at such depths? A former Royal Navy Rear Admiral gave us his assessment.
The pressure down at that level is about 2 tonnes per square inch, whereas of course at the surface it's just 1 atmosphere. So you've got that to contend with. So the pressure hull has to withstand that sort of weight, if you like. Secondly, it's very cold, and if they don't have any electricity, it's dark as well. So these are extreme survival conditions. But the critical thing is that the pressure hull withstands that pressure.
Now, this time-lapse shows marine traffic in the hours after the sub went missing. You can see that a number of ships start to move to the area where it disappeared. And according to OceanGate, the Titan made successful expeditions to the Titanic wreckage in both 2021 and 2022, and it's undergone more than 50 test dives, including, the company says, to a depth of nearly 4,000 metres.
Well, someone who's actually been on one of those test dives is joining us from Connecticut now, David Pogue, a journalist who's been on board Titan and made the trip last year. David, really good to have you with us this morning. So first of all, you've been on board Titan. What was it like?
It has the feeling of maybe a minivan with all the seats removed. So as you said, the carbon fiber tube is the fuselage, and there's a floor. So you're sitting on the floor with your back against those curved walls. It holds 5 people, probably could hold 6 people, but you're sitting with your legs alternating sides like this. The lighting is very cool in there. They play music. There is a rudimentary bathroom, which is basically a pee bottle and some Ziploc bags, but there is a privacy curtain that you can draw and they turn up the music. So it's an experience. It's a futuristic, very cool craft.
Did you feel safe, David?
It's a tough question because there's the intellectual feeling of safety, and on that I was completely satisfied. They showed me all the backup systems and backups of backups. They had made 2 years worth of dives to the Titanic, never had an injury, never had a fatality. Stockton Rush, the guy who designed this sub, that's him on the screen right now. He knows everything about the sub. He knows everything about the Titanic. He's very experienced. So intellectually, there was nothing to worry about. Emotionally is another story. I knew there were many things that could kill me.
Well, when you ran deep, how would you describe the pressure? Did you feel it at all?
To be absolutely clear, they do 5 dives on each week-long trip. And the CBS News dive, the one I was on, was the first dive. and it got only to 37 feet before being abandoned, canceled because of a malfunction.
Right.
So I never went to the Titanic depths, but no, at the Titanic depths, it feels just like you're on sea level because it's the same air pressure inside as above sea level.
And I know you've spoken about this in the past, this off-the-shelf components. Can you elaborate on that and if that gave you anxiety off the back of that safety question?
It did. As a layperson, it alarmed me to see this multi-million-dollar submersible craft piloted, I kid you not, with a PlayStation video game controller, a $16 plastic made in China controller. But Stockton Rush said, you know what? These are very reliable. They're mass produced, does exactly what we need. And they're so cheap we can have, yeah, there it is. We can have spares on hand.
Wow.
So, and there's a bunch of things. The lighting above him, he said, we got these from camperworld.com. So there's a bunch of things that are sort of improvised that made me a little nervous. Okay. But he stressed that the pressure capsule, the actual carbon fiber tube, was developed in conjunction with NASA, and he promised was rock solid.
Did Stockton warn you about the dangers that potentially it could go wrong?
Oh, do they warn you? You sign a waiver that would make your toes curl. It's like 8 paragraphs of things that could kill you or permanently disable you.
Wow. And you still went ahead with that?
I did.
Wow. And so presumably those 5 who are on board now had to sign that as well. So they would have known, even though it's tough to think about, they would have known that potentially it could go wrong.
It's true. I mean, the clientele for this thing, remember, it's $250,000 US to get a ticket on board.
Yeah.
So these are people who are in large part male, middle-aged, wealthy, and they're adrenaline junkies. They've been to the Blue Origin rocket. They've been to volcanoes. For them, this is the spice of life. It's risky, dangerous, thrilling adventure.
And we looked at, just finally, how we just saw all the vessels that are being pushed towards that search area, bring it to the present now, David. I mean, but essentially, if it's not on the surface already and just haven't been found, that's obviously the best case scenario. But worst case scenario, I mean, are they alone out there?
If they are underwater, I don't see how there is any hope. There are no other craft that can go to Titanic depths that can be mobilized in a day and a half. And even if there were, there isn't one that could tow it back to the surface. So I think the underwater search is an exercise in futility.
Okay, David Pogue, really interesting chat. Thanks so much for your time this morning.